I am going to ask you to do something very, very challenging. I agree that you all need to get to know each other a little bit better. And when I say so, not before, I know you're highly overachieving people. Don't jump the gun, just do it when I say. I want you to turn around to the person in front of you, the person behind you, say your name, and say where you work. You're gonna have 30 seconds. It's gonna be hard, but I've got a timer, so go. Just introduce yourself, name and where you work. Got 10 seconds. All right. Shh. The hard part is not getting people to talk, it's getting them to stop talking. I know, I'm really good at it. Talking. So, why did I do that? Well, pretty simply, you're going to hear some great things on stage today. Some nice ideas, something you might find inspirational. But I do honestly believe that it is nowhere near as valuable as the human capital in this room right now. You all chose to be here. You're a unique slice of Romania. And if you don't get to know this kind of group, and the fact that you are the kinds of people that are going to make this country a better place, we really kind of screwed up with TEDx. So keep talking to each other, just not right now. The second reason I did that is I could talk about who I am and what I do, but it's a little more fun just to show you. I've spent the last 7 years here challenging norms, like sitting and listening to a guy on stage for hours and hours. This is not natural behavior. I don't really believe in this kind of thing. I believe in creating environments where people get to know each other and start working together on the things that they believe in. I started doing this offline community building work as a Peace Corps volunteer, working with Romanians on challenging their time and place. A lot of volunteerism activities. Don't wait around for the government to go fix your parks. Just get out of bed on a Saturday morning and go do it. I started then with technology, as was mentioned, with TechSoup, and I work now mostly in online community creation, getting people to meet each other online, cook up crazy projects. We've got some restarters in the room today. People who have found a community of support and built a website, an app, something that can help motivate Romanians offline in social change. Check it out if you're interested, restartromania.ro. Why do I do this stuff? The full story is in De Cultura Vista this month. Fundamentally, it's because I do not believe in Asta Este. If you want to get me really angry, just say that around me. We all have a responsibility to do something, to take control of building a better time and place. Asta Este, 2 worst words in Romania. Also, because I have no shame, and I believe in heroes. I believe in ideals. I believe in good. So, why not, you know? Moving on to the point of today's speech, perhaps, a question for you. Where were you in January? This is not Piața Universității, but I do love this guy. He's pretty awesome. What happened in Piața Universității? You had a bunch of people out. People were expressing themselves in a really important way for democracy. They were angry, some were happy, some were ecstatic, some were disappointed about what happened. Was it spontaneous? Partially. Then there were the ACTA protests. 40,000 people said they were going to show up. 800 showed up. Was that a massive win, or was that a massive failure? Do we actually know? Can we talk about that intelligently? Do we have a rubric for understanding this? Good question. But regardless of whether that was a win or a loss, something that was obvious is that media was being used to encourage dialogue, social media, about serious issues and aggregate people. And what was interesting for me, and what I'm kind of wanting to share today, is that this was happening largely without a coherent presence or leadership from what we would call organized civil society. So what's my idea worth sharing? Good question. It's something I think about, it's something I like, something I've been percolating for a while. I think that civil society, as we know it, is dying. Does that matter? First of all, what is civil society? If I'm going to make that claim, I should define it a little bit. One of the best metaphors I know for civil society is that it's the human social immune system, that people identify a perceived threat, like, little white blood cells, and they aggregate and they challenge that threat. It's a human reaction to solve a problem or support something. It's fundamentally about changing a behavior from one state to another, changing a mindset. It's about moving people, changing people. Unfortunately, the words and the language of civil society were defined by these guys more than 100 years ago. The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Mellons, the great industrialists of America that created modern philanthropy and the market economic for modern civil society. Grant making, right? These guys had built what they built, and they believed that they could engineer the same kind of change in people, that they could create, the Ford-style chain of every, what was it Ford said? You can all have a car as long as you can have your Ford in any color you want as long as it's black. They were kind of doing the same thing with civil society, which is contradictory. People are different. People are confused. They get motivated by different things. If we're trying to change people, doing top-down management seems to be a bit of a tricky proposition. How did this manifest? It showed up in things like prohibition, right? When America outlawed drinking. Yeah, it worked out real well. It showed up in, I think, again, these management styles that frustrated the folks who were on the other end of the spectrum. Activists, the people that expressed themselves in the 1968, 1969 era, radicals, anarchists. We have all sorts of dirty words for them because they just didn't play by the rules. But they were changing people, right? They were out on the streets, getting people engaged in changing perceptions. They weren't concerned about sustainability, funding, organizational structures. They were just doing it because they were mad. That's civil society. That's engagement. Hippies. And in Romania, what happened? 1989, and you had those industrial philanthropists show up. Because what do you need for civil society? Well, for democracy. Civil society, right? That's the model they understand. So they started throwing huge amounts of money at this country and this entire region. So what is civil society as we know it? What did it look like until a few years ago? Kind of the same, right? Philanthropy paid for a very particular model that led to a lot of people sitting around in rooms talking about civil society, but not really engaging people. That isn't to say that there aren't fantastic, wonderful, beautiful little things happening all around Romania that are incredibly representational of civil society. Little dance groups, music clubs, volunteerism things, little grassroots stuff. It is out there, but it's not what we necessarily recognize when we talk about civil society in this country. It's also not to say that they didn't do some good things. These people have had their successes, but if we are to accept that civil society is about changing people's behaviors and challenging them to move in a different way, what you see here is missing something. It's these guys. If your grandma, it's a stink test for civil society. If a bunica can't tell you about what's going on in civil society, I would argue that you have failed. You've not reached regular people. Why did I choose this slide? You remember when they tried to outlaw pig killing at Christmas time? Awesome. Yeah, why don't you take away my tweaka too? These people have been left out. And it leads to this interesting space in civil society. Grassroots, on one side, talking about citizen engagement, talking about people getting angry and doing things just because they think it's the right thing to do. And AstroTurf, plastic grass, right? You can buy it, you can lay it down on the field, but is it really civil society? It's a statistic that, some statistics that came out of a report recently that kind of support my point here. A few years ago. Could be worse. There was another survey done about the same time in Bulgaria where more Bulgarians believe that there are people living on the moon than know what civil society is. Not good. So, if people don't know who we are, again, are we succeeding as civil society? You certainly can't have much influence. I believe this is an unsustainable paradigm, this kind of AstroTurf civil society. It's not supported by people, and unfortunately, the donors that paid for it are leaving or have left. The USAIDs, the MOTS, these sorts of people. Which is leaving organized civil society, the people at that round table, with only one option in the market economic that they understand. Good luck. The EU's the skeleton, it's there to kill you, in case you missed that. The EU is not necessarily the most friendly to civil society. It works in a very particular way and supports very particular kinds of programming. But I think, as most of us understand, central planning does have some weaknesses. Not to mention the administrative burden of dealing with the EU, which is already killing NGOs in this country. So what? So what? Obviously, it's not the end of social change. I am afraid that many of the NGOs that we can name will die in the next few years, or will be forced to radically change the way they do business. On the other hand, if I'm going to be a jerk about it, and they weren't connecting with people, is that such a loss anyway? What I'm sad about in the loss of organized civil society is the loss of data. These are organizations who have failed to connect with people, but they learned two really, really important things along the way. They learned how to define problems through research in their little rooms by themselves. It's very cool. And they learned how to change laws. And if you do want to change society, at some point, legislation comes into play. These two things could be really influential in what is working right now. A couple of years ago, the world really took social change online. People started pitching ideas in virtual space, building communities, and going offline to effect change. This has been a fascinating democratization of the change agenda. Used to be experts talking to themselves, and now it's everyone bitching. Are they always right? No, of course not. But neither are the experts. I would argue that because they're people-driven, because they're dialogue-driven organizations, the people that engage with them are going to change, and there's a greater resonance and potential for sustainability there. It's really the difference between opting in and being told what to do. This style of movement, it's all about campaigning. It's not about the industrial style war on poverty, the war on hunger. It's about little things that make people mad and trying to change that. Does it work? Yeah, sometimes it does, right? We saw it happen in Moldova, the Twitter revolution. We saw it happen across North Africa. Let's Do It Romania, fantastic example of something that really utilized social media to get like 220,000 people out of bed the first year. That's crazy. The last time 220,000 Romanians got out of bed on a Saturday morning was when the Romans invaded. Sometimes I'm funny. So the other time, that model is replicating, though, kind of traditional social organizing, right? It's not necessarily where I think we're headed. Where I think we're headed is into the app space. For the first time in history, civil society can start nagging you from your pocket. We can reach you around a very, very specific thing where you are anytime and ask you to do something differently. For-profits are leading this space right now. You're subject to apps all the time. It's training you how to behave. It's training you how to respond. It's training you to change something. Civil society needs to get in that game. When does it work? Pretty simple, on-off issues. Start doing this, stop doing that. What is it right now? Well, it's kind of like this. It's very new stuff. It's kind of cute, but if you teach this kid that he's a superhero, he might start believing it. You can't take that back from people. Same thing is starting with apps. It's starting to work, and it's starting to become undeniably powerful, which is a huge opportunity for civil society, for all of us, really, not just civil society. Because again, a lot of these people, they don't define as civil society. What do we need to do? What do I hope? I hope that we can create an unholy alliance between the big, old-school organizations who have their data and have their knowledge and understand how to push for long-term institutional change, who are still fighting the war on whatever, and link them with the campaigners who are fighting battles. They're really good at connecting with people. Take those campaigns, break down the war on poverty into the 50,000 little things that can be changed by each and every one of us right now that might in aggregate start to make a difference in the way poverty actually exists and manifests in the world. You can change the way you spend money. You can change the way you do things. Now, if we can actually get you to start making that change through a mobile phone app, through a campaign of some sort, and begin putting those things on top of each other, again, sooner or later, we have people making change, which can then be taken to the old school organizations and used to advocate for real systemic legal change and create a nice virtuous cycle of people who are being a part of creating a paradigm that they would actually want to believe in versus being told, stop drinking. So, to close, get started. What is stopping you from doing this right now? Something pissed you off in Romania last week? Just guessing? Maybe last month? Something made you angry? Start a Facebook page. Start screaming out into the digital void and see if anybody else agrees with you. If your thumbs get tired from tweeting about it, move on. If they're not responding, what did it cost you? This is a great place to test ideas in the social change marketplace. See what happens. See if anybody else cares. And if they do, maybe something comes of it. If they don't, you probably had a good discussion anyway. Fundamentally, agree or disagree with how I believe civil society is changing and social interaction is changing in all of our lives. This stuff is your choice. You can do this kind of thing. You can also not. You can believe in asta este, or you can, again, engage. Start using some of these tools. It's your country. It's your choice. No one else is going to do it for you. Thanks.